You know, all this voter initiative talk got us talking about Idaho's relationship with the will of the people. Idaho's initiative and referendum policies were written into the state constitution in 1912, but it took until 1933 for the legislature to set up how citizens could initiate a law or vote for the approval of one passed by lawmakers. The first one put to the people, that would be a referendum on a 2% sales tax. The people rejected it in 1936. The last one, Medicaid expansion in 2018, passed by 60% of the voters. Overall, we've had 37 make it to the ballot. 15 initiatives have been adopted, 15 have been defeated. As for the referendums, 4 have been rejected, 3 have been approved by voters, including the last time lawmakers repealed a voter initiative. Here's how this happened. So initiative got repealed by a voter referendum. We'll get to that. In 1994, Idaho voters approved by nearly 60% an initiative to limit the number of terms an elected official could serve, from Congress down to the local school board. A year later, U.S. Supreme Court, they voided the congressional part because, well, states, they can't make rules for the feds. But they left in the rest of the term limits for that law. No more than 8 years in a 15-year period for state, county, and city officials, and no more than 6 years serving out of 11 for county commissioners and school board trustees. And voters, they agreed to a couple different versions over the next few years, in 1996 and in 1998. But that percentage of approval, that kind of kept sliding from nearly 60% in 1994 to 56% in 96 to a little more than 54% in 1998. Then came the Republican State Convention in 2000. The state convention, the Idaho State GOP Party Convention, and they passed a plank to their party platform in opposition to term limits, which brings us to the 2002 legislative session, when lawmakers, now facing that 8-year limit, thought it would be a good time to address it, deciding it didn't matter what the voters wanted in 1994. They were going to make quick work and history, becoming the first state to repeal voter-approved term limits. Idaho's lawmakers.
It's really an issue of who is in charge, either the people or the legislature.
They didn't
wrestling with the will of the people.
We have had term limits in the state of Idaho ever since this state started voting, and that is called the ballot box.
Took on title card status at the State House in 2002.
I'm here because I hear my legislature saying, it doesn't matter what you voted for. We know best. We're going to change it.
The repeal of the state's term limits was so pressing,
we got this poison and filth coming from back east.
House Bill 425 was introduced in the second week of the session and decided within the next 16 days.
Speaker Newcomb says it's not a matter of overturning a vote of the people, but rather of educating the public.
Well, I think they don't understand. I think that's what I've tried to bring to light in this whole process.
By January 24th, it was being debated on the House floor.
70 lawmakers, one question: the repeal of a term limits law which voters twice called a good idea. But was that really what they meant?
When out-of-state money starts coming in, I get a little paranoid.
Speaker Bruce Newcomb says those statewide votes were bought with California's money and an ad campaign that didn't tell the full story of what term limits would do.
We are going to take on the issue, not for ourselves, but because we have friends and neighbors back home who have talked to us about this issue, who have told us that they don't want to term limit out the local sheriff.
If the people don't like the way I vote, they should get rid of me. But I should not be forced out of office only because I have been here X number of years.
And now the question is, shall House Bill 425 pass?
The vote, 50-20 in favor of repeal, more than enough to override the veto, which everyone knows is coming.
It would a week later.
3 hours after the term limits bill hit his desk, Governor Kempthorne took out the stamp.
The day after the Senate passed the bill by a wider than expected margin.
Today, I hope people recognize they have a governor who is simply backing up what I believe is the will of the people. And if that's politically risky, so be it.
An override vote was immediately scheduled for the next day.
Will term limits be repealed by Friday night?
I think they will be, and for now.
And they were, by nearly identical votes in both chambers.
First the House.
The Secretary will call the roll.
Then the Senate overrode the governor's veto, taking term limits off the books. Almost immediately, term limits advocates said indeed they will force the issue this fall.
I think the people of Idaho are going to rise up and call this one of the most terrible decisions that this legislature's ever done.
Except the people didn't exactly rise up and reject what the 56th legislature rejected. In a referendum that following November, 50.2% of voters, nearly the slimmest of simple majorities, agreed to keep term limits repealed. As many have pointed out, term limits are defined by the ballot box. And those same people who likely voted for legal term limits were the same who likely voted into office several politicians who were opposed to term limits and or served several terms. For example, Ron Crane, who served 16 years as representative during this time and another 20 years as state treasurer, or Lawrence Wasden, who became Idaho's longest serving attorney general at 20 years. So a voter initiative is the will of the people, sure, and has proven to be set in stone for the last 90 plus years, except for that one time it was shown to be otherwise.